Today, we're going to be talking about getting more from BIM with Assemble and the integration to Autodesk Docs. I'll go through the agenda quickly again. We're going to talk about current challenges that are faced by our BIM teams. We'll look a little bit at connected construction and what that means in terms of specific workflows. I'm going to have a couple of demos in here that I'll go through to better showcase what I'm talking about. We'll take a look at model conditioning, and then we'll move into Q&A and close out. All right. So first, to set the stage and really to dig in a little bit, obviously, we all know that construction is very, very complex, and it's a multidimensional collaborative effort amongst many, many teams. So to execute on projects effectively, everyone really needs to stay in sync together, and there needs to be trust, there needs to be accountability, and there needs to be collaboration across the entire project team, not just the little teams that we find ourselves working in. So keeping projects within budget and on time is obviously easier said than done. I think we all probably know the pain of that. But we don't want to just meet expectations on projects, right? We also want to exceed expectations. We want to improve reputation. We want to continue winning more work, having more projects to do. And so how do we do that? How do we exceed projects in a really effective way? All right. Well, for starters, we found that 82% of BIM users found a positive ROI, or return on investment, through leveraging BIM technology on their projects. So that's one way. Go to the next slide. But we also know that 29% of smaller to larger GCs and subcontractors don't bid on jobs that have any kind of BIM requirements. They don't want to, maybe you don't have the resources to do that work, don't want to put in that work. So why do we see a lot of teams still shying away from BIM requirements on projects? We'll go a little bit more into that. What are some of the challenges that our projects teams face when they are taking on those BIM requirements, and why are they shying away from those things? So in the simplest answer, honestly, I would say it's still because of the lack of familiarity across a lot of teams in regards to BIM, right? I used to be a technical solutions executive for Autodesk, and during that time, I would hear a lot of customers say that they don't have access to tools that can really allow them to engage with the BIM data on a project, or even that they have access, right? There's a lack of BIM knowledge across their teams as well, especially if they have access to BIM data just through specific design tools. A lot of people don't know how to use those design tools. And if that's where all of the BIM data lives, that's not accessible to those folks. It can be really hard and cumbersome to get into those models and understand them inside of those design offering tools. I think probably most of us know how complex those different softwares can be. And so for someone that's just needing to pull out basic information, that can be a really overwhelming challenge. There also are always the consistent struggles in construction of limited resources, right? And more specifically, limited BIM-enabled resources. And so we don't have the right tools or the right folks to support other team members and stakeholders on these BIM data workflows. These models then are being built by designers, and often they don't include all of the rich construction information that's really, really impactful for downstream uses and other things like work breakdown structures, WBSs, or leveraging different scope breakdowns by bid package. So a lot of those design models don't have that information right out of the gate, and that doesn't enable those folks to pull that information. And then often a lot of team members really struggle to ensure that they're always looking at the latest and greatest data, whether that's from a plan set like drawings or from 3D models. And the same goes across the entire project lifecycle. So they're constantly changing throughout the construction process, right, through that project. And we really need to make sure that we're leveraging the latest and greatest project information, but we don't always have assurance that we're doing that. And lastly, field teams typically don't even ever get access to the model for a lot of different reasons, but it really could help them to understand the project complexities even better than always just relying on 2D plans. We know that a lot of rich metadata is held in the 3D model. And so if they're just looking at 2D plans, then they're not privy to a lot of that information. All right. So ultimately, BIM teams really struggle to find a seamless way to empower different project stakeholders with accountable BIM data to make better informed decisions and receive that even greater return on investment across their teams. And a really big reason for this is that many of the design tools are desktop based and they're very, very complex, as I mentioned. Not to mention that manual tasks involved with static documents and spreadsheets are super tedious. There's a lot of I mean, I've broken a million spreadsheets. They're also very time consuming, and they can cause delays and mistakes if said person breaks spreadsheet. So this is where Assemble can really help to empower more stakeholders on the project to be BIM enabled. Okay, so at a high level, Autodesk Assemble was a product that Autodesk acquired several years ago, is an extremely powerful model conditioning and BIM data management solution that enables BIM teams to organize, to customize, and to share model information with other key project stakeholders for a variety of different downstream workflows. And we'll take a look at a few of those today. So I'm going to hand it over to Lauren to talk more about the Autodesk Construction Cloud.
All right, thank you, Lisa. I wanted to talk a little bit about the Autodesk Construction Cloud today. Assemble is a part of the Autodesk Construction Cloud portfolio, and it provides tremendous value in both pre-construction and construction phases of the project. The Construction Cloud brings together the most powerful portfolio of construction management software products in the industry, supporting workflows spanning all phases of the construction, from design to planning, to building, to operations. There's a tremendous breadth of supported workflows, depth of capabilities in each of the software products, and connectivity of data between these products. Over the past year, Autodesk has focused on three main areas of advancement with Construction Cloud. Continuing investment, including Assemble, Building Connect, PlanGrid, and BIM 360 software, delivering more integrations and connectivity between the products and building a unified platform.
Thank you, Lauren. All right, so for those of you that are unfamiliar, the Autodesk Construction Cloud, well, we just talked about that. So what I'm excited to talk with you about today is the integration between Autodesk Assemble and Autodesk Docs. So I know that this is a What's New in Assemble webinar, and that's what I really want to focus on today. This is huge because we're leveraging Autodesk Docs as the common data environment, or as the central common place, right, for all of our Assemble work. And that's massive because, as Lauren mentioned, ACC, or the Autodesk Construction Cloud, is really where we're holding all of our project information from start to finish. And so that Assemble can tie into that. And what we look at in Assemble is pulling that latest and greatest information. That's huge. The connection to Autodesk Docs also allows our Assemble users to publish Revit models directly from Autodesk Docs. You can have them in Docs, right, as that foundational project information, push them over to Assemble. We even can pull them from BIM 360 Docs to Assemble without the need of the Revit add-in anymore. So that's really, really huge. Essentially, what we're doing is reducing duplication of efforts, right, by leveraging the common data environment that is Autodesk Docs, that is the Autodesk Construction Cloud, and ensuring that everybody is working from the latest project documents. All right, so I'm excited to show the new integration between Assemble and Docs. I'm going to create a project, and what I can do is create and link it to an existing Construction Cloud project. That's what you're seeing here. So choosing an account, choosing the project, whether it's BIM 360 or Autodesk Docs, doesn't matter, right? We can choose whichever. And what it'll do is it'll take the job name and it'll automatically populate a project card with the name. We can see that here, right? Those are all of our different projects. So once it's created, you see the project's already been linked to Docs environment. You click into the card, click the blue action item to add models. And these models can either be living in our project files of our field folder, right? What we're looking at is Autodesk Docs. We can click on the latest and greatest models for our design team, or that our design team has issued to the project files, and then we can import that into our latest versions. So it's automatically going to pull the names from Docs of those particular models, and then we can view progress when those models are being uploaded. So on the left, we have a list of all the models that have been published, and on the right, we can click to this drop down, view the project progress, and those models being imported. So we can click into a model, right, to view the Assemble interface here. And just as before, we have the ability to view all the quantities and the inventory panel that's on the left side. We have a dynamic connection between the model and those quantities. So we can click on different objects. We can open properties just as you would before, and click the model properties that are being pulled from the Revit model, right? That's all of that rich metadata that's coming from the metadata. And it could be Revit or any other file type that Assemble supports. We can condition the model using Assemble properties. We can even continue on with our existing integration here. So we're looking at all the different properties in this space. So pulling all of that information into here. We also can do things like issues. Yep. So we can go in, look at our 2D drawings in here. Yep. So we can look at issues. The issues integration will link to our docs environment where then I can create issues directly on the model. Maybe this is a design issue that I need to send back to my architect, right? So we could take a 3D snapshot in here, and that's going to allow me to populate the issue, save it, and then I can even manage that within Assemble or within Autodesk Docs. So we don't have to have folks going into Assemble to be able to see this information. That's why this Assemble to Autodesk Docs integration is so important. So we can link this to the view so that we can reference this down the road. So that's kind of saving it as a view, right? That issue is now being saved as a view. Awesome. So now we can see all of the other models that live in here. Everything is being updated. And again, if it's being updated in Assemble, it's also linked to Autodesk Docs, right? So that update is also happening in Autodesk Docs. So again, any issue that I'm creating in Assemble is going to be translated to Autodesk Docs. Now, we talked earlier about it can be, some of our field folks, it might be too complex, or maybe they don't have access to Assemble, but doesn't matter, right? They're able to access that issue information from Autodesk Docs. And that's why that's really that foundational piece of the Autodesk Construction Cloud. Awesome. All right, so extending the value of BIM. To jump forward here a little bit, obviously, once you have that model inside of Assemble, there's a lot of additional connections, again, still to that central common data environment with that issue tagging workflow that we just looked at, and being able to leverage those documents inside of Assemble too, right? The documents that we're holding in Autodesk Docs can be accessed in Assemble, so that's really huge too. But you really start to truly begin to see the value of BIM as it enables you to extend BIM beyond just the VDC team in an easy to use web application. Okay, so let's dig in a little bit deeper to what I'm talking about. Obviously, we just talked about our latest cloud publishing workflow that works for Revit models currently, but Assemble also has the power to consume a variety of different model types, whether it's Revit, maybe it's Civil 3D, maybe you're using the very complex Navisworks, or even AutoCAD file types, right? You can use our publisher add-ins to push these models directly into Assemble's web environment so that everybody is able to access that information from there. What this does is really enables projects to not just be reliant on Revit-based processes, because there are still a ton of projects leveraging a very wide range of different types of models today. Okay. And we also talked about before that models don't always have all that construction-rich data that a team often needs. So with Assemble's model conditioning workflows, we can quickly add construction-rich information to the model in that cloud-based environment to make it really easy to follow, or really easy to kind of understand, to take in, to interpret. And that also allows our project teams to break down different areas of the project in the way that they need to. So for instance, if I'm only focused on windows, or I only need to see doors, or I'm only looking for a certain type of framing, I can condition the model to hide everything else that I don't care about. I can easily quantify. I can easily look at those properties. I can colorize, right, to very quickly understand what I'm looking at. So that model conditioning can be incredibly helpful for just better understanding the model without all of the overwhelm of looking at the entire thing. Okay. We also discussed those constant changes that are happening throughout the design model and throughout the project itself, right? And so we really need to have a way to quickly understand those changes and how those changes are impacting the project schedule as well as the project budget. So with Assemble's change management workflow, you can immediately see the design changes with one click, and you can really understand if the quantities are actually driving up, right? Maybe certain things are increasing our cost, and maybe we have other situations where items on the project have been changed in the actual model that the field teams are currently working on. So it's really important that we're able to share that information so that we're not having to do redundant work. If that's the case, right, if things that have been designed have changed and we have our field folks working off of that obsolete information, then we can immediately get this information out to the field to hopefully prevent any of that additional rework and also, waste of resources that might be happening. Scheduling, keeping projects on track. So Assemble also has the ability to directly connect to your Primavera P6 schedule, if that's what you're leveraging, to map schedule start and end dates for quick visibility and to look aheads, to understand critical path, and really have a general visual, which I think is really key here, a visual understanding of how the project will be progressing throughout the project lifecycle on its current track, right? So we can understand if our schedule is doing this, what does that mean for the rest of our project? And having that insight is really, really helpful. We don't just want to be crossing our fingers on a project and hoping it's going to turn out the way that we're anticipating. We want to have that confidence. And so scheduling and being able to see that inside of Assemble is really, really helpful here. All right, so let's get right back into the platform. You can start to leverage a lot of the design information that's already in the model, but then continue to add a lot of that construction-rich data like I was already talking about. So you can see we can group by structure material that's already in the model, but we know that maybe not everything is going to be 100% perfect for how we would like to understand the concrete information. So we can select all these different concrete items, and we can start to redefine some of this information into a specific scope. So we'll grab those. And then what we can do is we can start to create a bid package of concrete information. We can start to leverage some of these Assemble properties that we have. Now, Assemble properties are properties we're building out in Assemble. We can filter directly into them, or we can reorganize them. We can pull out whatever data we might need to see. We can filter down into that concrete. We can grab bid packages. We can put in the value of the concrete that we're conditioning out, and we can actually go ahead and update this kind of stuff. Once we update that, we can see that we can aggregate everything into a bid package, and we can dig in a little bit deeper. So we have all of this design-rich information that we can leverage in this space here. So if I look into floors, right, I can look for a certain type of flooring in here. I can go over to the Assemble properties. Now, again, Assemble properties are what we're putting in Assemble. Model properties are the properties that are being pulled in from whatever design platform we're utilizing, but I can see all the model properties in here. So if I think about, a lot of my folks don't have access to the design software itself, they can still get those model properties that are so important in this space without having to have Navisworks, without having to have all of those other, costly and often siloed design solutions. So we can also decide what we want to see in here in terms of properties. If I want to turn certain things off, I can. If I want to change the order of the properties, that also goes for my inventory panel in here, right? I can look on floors, can only see the information that I need to see. So for example, if like the thickness wasn't relevant to me, which it would be, but if it wasn't, I could just eliminate that column. We can order by bid package. So once I build out a bid package, I can look specifically for that concrete bid package in here. You can go in, see the different components of that bid package. I can see the quantity. Now, again, if anything changes from that model and I'm hosting that model in Autodesk Docs, which is then being pushed into Assemble, these quantities are going to automatically change for me. And I have confidence that we're utilizing the latest and greatest model, right? Because it's coming from the Autodesk Construction Cloud, where really my repository of all of my most recent information. You can also colorize by property. This just helps me understand what I'm looking at a lot better. So this means that if I want to I want all my floors to be green, for example, can colorize in that way. That allows me to very quickly look at that model and understand what I'm looking at. You can colorize anything. Any object that lives in this Assemble model can be colorized. You can get really specific, right? Look at what we're doing in here. This is for our flooring. We've broken it down. Well, this is walls, but let's say we're looking at flooring. We're breaking it down to the different types of flooring that we have in there. We can colorize those different areas, so I know exactly what I'm looking at. If I'm looking for a certain type of beam, or maybe I'm looking for a certain type of foundation, if I know that that's pink and all that I'm looking at is my flooring right now, I'm very easily drawn to that. Also important to note that the 2D model is fully connected to the 3D model, which means if I click on a component in my 2D model down there, that's also going to highlight it in my 3D model. This can be really helpful because a lot of folks have but there can be a really big learning curve from getting people comfortable in working in a 2D environment to a 3D environment. But because of that interconnectivity, right, the inventory panel is connected to the 2D sheet, is connected to the 3D model. No matter what I click on, whether it's a component in the inventory panel or a component in the 3D model or the 2D sheet, it's all going to be highlighted in all three of those spaces. And I think that I have seen that be very, very helpful for folks in getting more comfortable in working with 2D models or 3D models. If they know where they need to click on in a 2D model and they can see what that looks like in the 3D model, they're more open, I think, to working with 3D models in the future. But that connectivity and the ability to colorize, I think, is very helpful in creating bid packages, understanding what you're looking at and understanding quantities. Okay. So let's now talk about how we can empower the field teams, which I was talking about a little bit. I think our field folks can be a little uncomfortable in working with 3D, but let's talk about how we can empower the field teams with BIM. So a common pain point across our customers that I've heard a lot is giving access to the model in the field. How do we do that, right? Those folks are not out there with Revit or Navisworks. They can't see the whole model. So let's show how Assemble can help during the construction phase when folks are actually out in the field with their iPads. Okay, so according to a recent survey, about 62% of construction professionals transfer field data manually or via a spreadsheet. And we know that that's dangerous, right? If we're doing anything manually, we have completely thrown out the window the assurance that we're using the right, most up-to-date information. And as I've mentioned, breaking a spreadsheet, super easy. Also don't have the confidence that we're working off the right information. Also, about 30% of data created during design and construction is lost by the time the projects are closed out. Don't know where it goes. I used to work in construction, so I know I would throw stuff in the back of a truck and I don't know where it ended up. So if we're not doing things in a technical way, if we don't have any kind of a repository or that common data environment, information is gone. And at the time of handover, we don't have the stuff that we need, right? So with BIM in the field and Assemble, we can leverage our work in place tracking workflow to make this much easier for the field. So work in place tracking means that I basically am visualizing what's already been checked off, right? Work in place tracking, I'm tracking what I'm currently working on. If we're just doing 2D sheets or we're just doing spreadsheets, we don't have a way to track that at all. But we're going to see work in place tracking in a visual way is incredibly helpful for our construction teams, and it makes the field work that much easier. So field teams can easily evaluate project risk by exploring the project in 3D. They can understand complexities that can easily be missed in 2D, right? This can be super helpful for like MEP work. It's a lot of times that we're having not conflicts, I can't think of the word. Anyways, things aren't built out right? Where we go into the field and we find out, oh shoot, this beam actually runs into this beam. We don't have enough space here. There's too much overlap. That's stuff that we can't find out if we're just looking at 2D sheets. That does not translate. There are a lot of construction issues that we don't figure out in the field if we're using 2D until we've actually constructed it and said this isn't actually feasible. But if we're looking at a 3D model, we can figure out that stuff, the clash. We can figure out the clash in advance, and we can go back to the design team and have those conversations. So the field team being able to see what the model looks like and understanding how everything is fitting together before they actually go and construct it is huge. Going to save a ton of time and a ton of resources. All right, so BIM in the field. With BIM in the field and with utilizing Assemble, right, we can leverage our work in place tracking workflow to make it much easier for our field folks to have this rich metadata that's going to help them be that much more successful. Field teams can easily evaluate project risk by exploring the project in 3D. That's going to help them understand those complexities that can be missed in 2D. So giving quick access to views to update properties with an offline available option is also a great value added feature. So a lot of times job sites don't have online capabilities or access to Wi-Fi. As Lauren said, I used to work in electric utilities and my projects were in the middle of Kansas and we didn't have anything except hay bales. So if I was relying on Wi-Fi, I would not have gotten any of the project information I needed. And it's an impossible ask to tell someone, download everything you need before you go all the way out there. We're not going to know everything we need, right? So it's great to be able to take these views offline and be able to leverage them in that way. And leveraging models for work in place tracking by simply selecting model objects and updating the status makes it really easy for our field teams to update the status once and then already have that sync back to the office. So I'm going to show you in a second what that looks like. But essentially, let's say we're out on a job site. I get a ton of, maybe we're doing mechanical work and we finish construction in like 3 big mechanical rooms. I can just highlight all of those pieces of equipment, change the status to install. That status is going to then be translated back to the office. So they're going to know, wow, they got all this stuff done today. That also helps me so that when I come back to work tomorrow, I have a clear remembrance of what I did the day before and a clear picture and like track forward of what I need to get accomplished the next day. Okay. So we are going to run through a quick example on an iPad. So this is what folks would be using in the field, right? So we're looking at a job 1 zone, or we're looking at zone 1 right now. We're doing a job walkthrough. So we have some piping, some structural members, and we're going to status those using the mobile app. So all you have to do is double click on an object, right? You can see its properties just like we could on the desktop. We can isolate it. We can give it a status. We can, again, access all of the properties there. You also can select a line item inventory to select on a group of objects, right? So here we're looking at the assembled properties. Again, those are the properties that live on top of the rich data that's coming in from Revit. So we can put in one of our assembled properties can be actual finish time. So I can change the finish time in here, saying when we got it done. So now that's updated. That's going to go back to the office as well, right? Again, these are all the assembled properties. So I can come in, I can change the installation status. Now I can do this. What I'm doing right now is for this individual column right here, but we could be selecting everything and that could be updating all of this at one time. So that's essentially it, right? We can go through, we can click item by item and change the update the installation status. We can change the completion date in there too. If that's a property that we have in there, we can do that individually, or we can grab a whole bunch of stuff. We could say, I worked on all of this today. This has all been installed. The completion date for all of this was at this time. Now, the reason that you might want to go in there and do items one by one is if you're barcoding anything, right? We can barcode in here too. So I could put a serial number in here. That's going to be really helpful because then I can take my iPad, I can just go scan that item and I can get all of these assembled properties as well as the model properties too for that specific item. So as I mentioned before, these assembled properties are totally customized. You can have whatever information you want in here. Just click on the item. You have all those properties in there. You can, again, add those individually or in a bulk way. But that's a really easy way for our field team to do that. And that was all done offline, right? To capture all of that information and then get that instantly back to the office. All right. So now let's talk about how we can harness and leverage that BIM data from the design model through construction and allow us to report using our Power BI integration. You do not have to use this Power BI integration to find so many positives and such a good ROI with Assemble and Autodesk Docs. But this, I think, is kind of the icing on the cake and a really cool thing that you can do with the information that you're building out. So with our Power BI integration, we can create dashboards and reports, and we can use those for reviews with project teams. We can use those for reviews with key stakeholders. We can look at work in place tracking, right? We can look at percentage complete. Those are things that project stakeholders care about, right? What has been done and what is yet to go, not only on the entire project, but mechanical or plumbing, piping, what's been completed? What do we still have yet to go? That's really key information to show those folks. This automatic integration makes it really easy for us to visualize project progress, schedule, status of the project by linking with, again, that Power BI dashboard. So these fully interactive and customizable reports and dashboards help you to drill down into the project data so that you can improve project control and outcome, not only on the project that you're currently working on, but projects in the future. Okay? So let's show a quick visual of what that integration looks like. I'm going to do that in just a second. Let's actually go to the next slide here. Okay, now this is reporting. I just talked about this, why we might want to utilize it, but there's just a couple of screenshots in here I think that are important. I am going to do a short demo in a second, but again, if I'm talking to key project stakeholders, maybe they don't understand all of the complexities of the projects, but they just want specific information. How much installation has been done for piping, right? That's a question that they might have. Or are we on schedule? Or what tasks have happened this last week? What did you get completed last week, right? We can attach that work in place tracking to the schedule to show them that. What status? what percentage has been installed? What do we still have yet to go? So I think not even having to walk through somebody through Power BI, but even just having screenshots like we're looking at right here can be so helpful just to send those key stakeholders so that they feel like they have a really good understanding of where the project is at, where it's yet to go, and they get answers to the questions that they're asking. Okay, now let's take a little look at Power BI. So this is a Power BI template. We've linked it to the Assemble model. We can drill down into different, let's say, floors of our project. All of these visuals are interactive, right? I can click into anything here. We could click on a completed object status. We could view the quantities with the inventory there. It's super, super interactive. And that's a really great way to report out on these quantities. I think it's very helpful that it's interactive because let's say you were sitting down with the project stakeholders, they have specific questions. You can say, let's dig into that, right? Like, let's go find that information. I remember specifically when I was in the field, I would use red lines, I would use Excel documents. And by the time I got out of the job site, it was already time for me to wrap up. That would make me have to go back to the office. I would probably have to take my work home and put on some stupid show and work on making a report, right? That would be my night though. What Power BI does, what this integration does, is it allows for automatic reporting by just clicking refresh and getting the latest information from the field, right? From that Assemble installation statuses that we were looking at in the field. So we're not having to do that, any kind of duplicate entry back in the office. I'm not having to take this information and put it into a spreadsheet. So with automatic reporting linked to Power BI, you can create these really, I think, good looking reports here, right? Looks a lot better than just an Excel spreadsheet that we can take in the project model, and then we can drill down into all the different quantities and statuses. So these templates, you don't have to build out. I know that could feel really overwhelming. I wouldn't want to do that. They come with the Power BI integration download. So if you downloaded Power BI, integrated it with Assemble, all of these templates are already going to be included. So that information from your Assemble project will automatically come into Power BI here. So really there's a low barrier to entry to use these reports. There's not things that you have to learn. There's not a big learning curve there. So it's really, I think, very helpful to synchronize that data in a very, very easy way. Okay, so that wraps up my conversation about Assemble and Autodesk Docs. I just want to recap the agenda really quickly. So we talked about current challenges that our BIM teams are facing. Hopefully a lot of those resonated with you. I know I could feel some pain from current roles I've faced and some resonance there. We talked about connected construction. Lauren helped us understand what the Autodesk Construction Cloud looks like and how we're connecting all 4 phases of our project together. We looked a little bit at model conditioning. We looked at colorization, right? Colorizing different components of our models. We looked at BIM data management. We looked at what it would look like in the field to do work in place tracking, to set those installation statuses. And then we looked at Power BI and how we could get that reporting information out really easily.